All right, everybody. I'm Patricia Traina of New York Giants on SI with Brandon Olson. We just finished up New York Giants mandatory minicamp, and Brandon indoors, but there was a lot to take in today, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, there's a lot of action going on throughout all the field, really. It was kind of wild. It was fun to see indoor practice.
Okay, so a couple of things to come out of this practice. Jalen Hyatt, who has had a really good spring, something happened with his left leg early on the practice. He was seen being stretched out. He left the field. That, however, opened the door for Bo Collins to have a pretty good practice.
Yeah, Bo Collins got a lot of reps with the ones today. Had a few good catches down the sideline. Got a lot of targets as well. Like whether or not they were caught or not, quarterbacks were giving him the ball, and I feel like that's at least a good sign of trust for an undrafted free agent.
Right, and the quarterback rotation was kind of interesting. We saw, whereas in the past we saw Jackson Dart in the work with the 11 on 11s every time, he was alternating for some reason this time.
Yeah, today we saw it was in the low red zone. We had Russ, then Jameis, and then DeVito. And then when running actual drives, we didn't see a drive from DeVito, but we did see from Russ, Jameis, and Dart.
Offensive line was interesting. Now, we did get to speak to the offensive assistant coaches. As promised, I was with Carmen Brasillo for basically the entire session. And Carmen Brasillo, I asked him specifically about Evan Neal and why Evan Neal has mostly worked on the left side. My theory was that was the side he played at Alabama, and pretty much that's what Brasillo confirmed. He says, we've been working him both sides of the field, but left side is where he's probably most comfortable, and that's where it seems like they're going to develop him. Now that brings up an interesting scenario, though, for the offensive line, because John Runyon Jr., of course, played left guard, and now if Evan Neal shows enough, they're going to flip the two.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation they've got themselves in on the offensive line. I'm still very interested to see how Evan Neal actually plays when we get into full football, because we had even Kayvon Thibodeau today was talking about it, where he's like, yeah, like defensive line pass rush, we don't get to show that much in OTAs, and neither does the offensive line, really. You don't get to show how you counter and how you really block and things. So it'll be really interesting to see how Evan Neal translates long term here.
For sure. And speaking of the defense, Abdul Carter, man, he was living in the backfield today.
Yeah, I mean, that pass rush was just, they were on fire today. It was crazy. And we know that, again, you can only see so much in the trenches, but also the Giants don't have their full starting offensive line out there. But, I mean, the amount of times that the defensive line just got through like that was insane. We had one drive where it was Tommy DeVito, and we started with it was sack were the first two plays, and it's not that he was holding the ball, it's that they were just flying in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could point to the fact that there's no contact. The offensive line is at a disadvantage, but as you said, Brandon, the speed at which these guys were getting into the backfield, basically before the offensive linemen could even get out of their stance, it was just amazing.
They're an athletic bunch. They're all just freaks, and they play with their hair on fire, and it's going to be really fun. And I think that no matter how this season goes, Giants fans can look at least the talent on the defensive line and say that they are in that elite bunch across the NFL already.
All right, a couple more things. We heard from the quarterbacks today, specifically Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. You and I were looking forward to this, and neither got really disappointed, I thought. Specifically about the offensive identity, it's still a work in progress, but I was particularly impressed by Winston and what he had to say about this whole role of being a backup and just doing what he can to make the offense or make the team as a whole better.
Yeah, he was like, hey, if I have to be the veteran for the younger guy, then I'll be that, and if I have to assist the more veteran quarterback in Russ, then I'll do that. I also love Russ talking about the identity of the offense, and he's like, hey, we're going to be explosive. That's what we're trying to do, and the Giants have no shortage of talent on the team anymore. They're getting there. They're a team that's really getting there. Explosive receivers, great deep threats. I know we saw Jalen Hyatt got banged up today, but he's someone that, with Russ throwing one of the most beautiful deep balls in the entire NFL, I mean, really, just of all time, it's an insane thing, even dating back to Seattle days. Seeing that with Jalen Hyatt and Malik Neighbors, they can be genuinely explosive, and we saw the running game be explosive when the offensive line was healthy last year. So explosive could be the identity of this team.
Yeah, Lord knows they've been missing that for what, several years now. Brandon, some final thoughts. You know, some guys were still missing from the workouts. We didn't see Bobby Okereke. We didn't see, obviously, Malik Neighbors, although he did pop in and out. Darius Alexander and Cam Scadaboo really didn't work either. Those two I would be a little concerned with, given that they're rookies and they've now missed basically most of, if not all of the spring.
Yeah, I'm torn on the Alexander part just because defensive line, you can't do too much. When they were doing defensive line individuals, he was over there, you know, asking for technical advice. He was still kind of shadow boxing with the dummy that they were working with. He was still trying to get it, but there's nothing quite like reps, and he hasn't been able to get those fully yet. Scadaboo, I don't even know what we can say about that one, but hopefully both these guys get right by the start of actual camp this summer.
Yeah, Brian Dable likes to tell us, not that he addressed that those guys have injuries, but he always likes to say that different guys that are rehabbing are at different spots in the rehab, and hence why we haven't seen Andrew Thomas. But Bobby Okereke, we saw him earlier in the spring, and they've kind of backed off of him. I'm not sure exactly why or what's going on there, but that kind of got my antenna up. Would you say?
And it was something that when Brian Dable got asked about it, he kind of just went, "I'm not going to talk about it. Don't know what to tell you." So there wasn't much information available from that. But yeah, hopefully he's good to go. He did mention earlier in the spring that, you know, he was really loving being in this defense for year 2 and getting to play in this defense, getting to learn it even more. So hopefully those valuable reps in year 2, and if he can come back, would be huge.
All right, well, the Giants wrap up their spring. They're going to have another week. I think the rookies are going to remain another week, and then everybody's going to take a much-needed rest. We, of course, here on New York Giants on SI, we're not taking a rest. We're still going to be here bringing you content 7 days a week, and of course, we will be here once the Giants kick off training camp. Brian Dable wouldn't answer my question as to what date they're starting, but we know it's next week, or next month, excuse me. So it's going to be here before we know it, and so make sure you keep it here on New York Giants on SI for all your New York Giants coverage. I'm Patricia Trainer, he's Brandon Olson, and we'll see you next time, Giant fans.